All right, let's get right into one of Kenya's most chilling political mysteries. We're talking about the 2016 assassination of Jacob Juma, a businessman who basically turned his social media accounts into a weapon against the government. To this day, his death is unsolved, and it's a stark reminder of what can happen when a powerful voice is silenced.
So, the official story? They'll tell you it was a simple roadside ambush, a robbery gone wrong. But, as we're about to see, the evidence tells a completely different story. One that points to something far more sinister, something that feels meticulously planned. So what really happened on that rainy Nairobi night? Let's start with the crime scene itself. Picture this: Ngong Road, Nairobi. Jacob Juma, a man who was famous and, to some, infamous, is found in his car, riddled with bullets. This was the violent, bloody end to a very public war he was waging against some very powerful people.
To really get why he was killed, you have to understand who this man was. See, after some business deals with the government apparently went south, Juma reinvented himself as this relentless anti-corruption crusader. His weapon of choice? Twitter. And his targets? Well, they were the most powerful figures in the entire country.
And look, Juma was not subtle. He wasn't speaking in riddles or dropping vague hints. This tweet, from just 5 months before he was killed, is him, flat out, naming the then Deputy President William Ruto as the person planning his assassination. I mean, he was playing an incredibly dangerous game, and he knew it.
And this is exactly why he was a target. Juma was a constant stream of explosive allegations. He was exposing massive corruption scandals, like the supposed theft of billions in the Eurobond affair and hundreds of millions from the National Youth Service. Every single tweet was making him more and more powerful enemies.
And here's what made him so dangerous. He wasn't just tweeting opinions into the void. Nope. He was publishing documents, phone logs, financial records, real evidence to back up what he was saying. This made him so much more than a nuisance. He was a legitimate, credible threat to the people he was calling out.
You can just feel the pressure that must have been building on him. Juma clearly knew the walls were closing in. In March of 2016, he started desperately searching for a place to live abroad. He was looking in New York, London, Cape Town, anywhere to get out. Just 2 months later, he was dead.
Okay, so let's get into his final hours, because this is where the official narrative just completely falls apart. You basically have two competing stories, the one the police gave and the one that journalists pieced together. And spoiler alert, they do not match up at all.
Just take a look at this breakdown. The police timeline claims they see Juma's car at 7:34 p.m., but journalists found security footage and witnesses showing he didn't even leave his apartment building until 7:45 p.m. The official story has him in a place he literally could not have been.
And here's the part that's just completely unbelievable. They claim he drove from one point, the Westlands Terminus, to another, the Villa Rosa Kempinski Hotel, in just 2 minutes. Now that's a 7-minute drive on a good day, but during Nairobi's insane rush hour traffic on a rainy night, it's physically impossible.
So the timeline is a total mess. But it's not just the timeline that doesn't add up. The crime scene itself raises some major red flags. It really starts to look less like an ambush and more like a carefully staged event.
So it really forces you to ask the question, what if the spot where they found Juma's car isn't actually where he was killed? What if the whole thing was a setup, a complete fabrication?
First off, let's talk forensics. The bullet wounds on his chest and neck were from extremely close range. You know, this wasn't a spray of bullets from a car driving by. This looks a lot more like an execution, up close and personal.
And then there's this little detail. In a chaotic shootout, you'd expect to find spent bullet casings all over the place. But at this scene, police found nothing, not a single one. It's almost as if somebody came through and neatly cleaned everything up.
And what people nearby heard, or rather what they didn't hear, is also super weird. There were construction workers close by. They didn't report hearing a bunch of gunshots. What they heard was 3 loud bumps, like a car hitting a curb or something. And maybe the most telling detail of all is the car itself. If you get ambushed while you're driving, you're going to see skid marks, right? Signs of a struggle, a crash, but Juma's car had none of that. The engine was even off. It looks like it just coasted to a gentle stop on the side of the road. You don't even have to take our word for it. The tow truck driver who was called to the scene, a guy who'd been to countless accidents and crime scenes, he knew right away something was off. His exact words were that the whole thing just looked staged.
So here we are, all these years later. And the case? It's gone ice cold.
The official investigation basically went nowhere, and it left behind this long trail of unanswered questions that all seem to point toward a deliberate, calculated cover-up.
And these questions are just chilling. Why on earth was his body taken to a police station for 4 hours before going to the morgue? Who put gauze on his wounds, tampering with evidence before the autopsy? Who is using his phone after he was dead to leading messages? And why is it still a secret who even made the first call to the police?
So who could possibly pull all this off? Well, a lot of suspicion has fallen on something called the Special Service Unit. This was a notorious and now thankfully disbanded police squad. They were known as the Enforcers, allegedly used by powerful people for exactly this kind of dirty work, political hits and assassinations.
And at his funeral, Juma's friends and allies, they did not hold back. They stood up and, in front of everyone, publicly accused top government officials, including the then Deputy President William Ruto, of ordering the murder. These weren't quiet whispers. This was a public accusation of a state-sanctioned hit.
And all of this leaves us with the huge, troubling question at the heart of this entire case. You see, Juma's death isn't just an unsolved murder. It's a story about power, about corruption, and about what happens when someone refuses to be silent. And it forces us all to ask, when the very people who are supposed to be investigating a crime are the main suspects, where does the search for truth even begin?